7 o'clock on this tasty Tetema Tuesday. And you know, if it's Tuesday, it's all about the Docket. All the latest headlines, all the latest news, all the latest shoe throwers. Wote wako. Edwin Obuya, Philip Ruto, Fanya Mambo Kinuthia in the house. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Mambo.
Iti sana.
Jeff, usiniangalie hiyo kiatu ilikuwa mzee sana. Haiwezi kuwa yangu. Hiyo kiatu ilikuwa na vumbi mingi bana. Then I was in Nairobi. I have an alibi.
No, you don't.
I have an alibi. I was in Nairobi.
Yes.
At that point in time, I was in a studio.
Yes.
Which studio is in Nairobi?
Okay.
And it was a live show. So Jeff, it was not me. Yeah, I didn't throw the shoe.
Kupunguza gharama. Government bloggers have tried really much to try and downplay the incident.
Right.
They have tried to show that maybe the shoe was not thrown, accidentally just moved towards the president's head. So that they have really tried to downplay the incident, but it calls into question, Jeff. The bigger issue is that the security of the president. That puts the country at risk, because imagine if there was somebody in that crowd with having a mawe or a uko Korea kuna wanga na mishale.
Correct.
If somebody has a dangerous weapon rather than a shoe, it could put a country in a very bad place security-wise, and it calls on the security officers around the president. If it were in the U.S., if such a thing happened, the president would have moved from that place immediately.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what dangers then are around that place.
Na libaki huko akiongea.
Anaendelea tu kuongea akitenga kigarama, sijui tumepunguza garama. That puts the security. No, the president is not just President William Ruto. He's the hope, and he carries the hope of the country. He carries the unity of the country.
This is a symbol of unity, the symbol of peace in this country. In as much as people were happy, those who criticize the government felt nice that happened, but of course it is not the first time someone is thrown a shoe at. But this is someone whose stability, whose health, whose good environment affects every other Kenyan. So for them to make it look like that was just something that happened by accident is so wrong, because had it been something else, you can imagine what the country would look like. Remember, we are in a region where these newcomers in the broad-based government are trying to settle down. So for someone to change a narrative, if something happened worse than that, for someone to change a narrative and say the president was targeted because he was in this region and people are conflicted in whether to be in government or not, in a neighboring county, an MP has been gunned down, and they're saying unless you get to tell us who killed the MP, we are not in this broad-based government, or we will determine when if we are remaining in the broad-based government or not. That was a very bad time and a very bad environment for such an incident to happen and then be taken lightly, like we are seeing some of these handlers and these fixers, propagandists trying to do. So I agree. That was very, very careless of them. Yes.
Fanya Mambo.
This desperate desire to have crowds. They allowed like 300, 400 bodabodas to follow the presidential motorcade so closely. Yani walikuwa wanafuata motorcade ya president, and then you are wondering, 300 young people carrying people on them because walikuwa wanabeba watu na hizo boda and the way they were riding. Wanasikia anataka from this market to the next and they would follow the head of state. We've never seen that nonsense. Always what we are used to is when the head of state is coming, they usually block the road. They make sure his cars pass and make sure they give you like 5 minutes just to make sure there's a gap between you and any other person following that motorcade. But there's such a desperate desire to show that he has crowds in Mount Kenya. They allowed bodabodas to follow his motorcade this closely. And they would follow him for kilometers on end. And then they would park very close to him. These people have not been checked. They have not been sectioned. Nobody knows what's in their pockets. Nobody knows what they are not carrying. Nobody even knows who their names are. The issue is, whether they have shoes. Now you can imagine those are 600 shoes. So that was when I saw this has gone way too low. A very desperate desire to show that the president is with the people. I mean, you remember when they refused to confess that during the Nairobi tour, the security officers lost a lot of guns. You remember in Mathare, you remember in Korogosho, they lost a lot of weapons because there was too much and it was hard to provide security for the president in those circumstances. The president is putting himself in the way of harm. And then he would probably come and blame security officers for himself putting himself in the way of harm. I don't think those tours were necessary. Everything he's doing, he could have done from Harambee House. So you go there, put yourself in harm's way, and then it becomes a Kenyan problem.
Harambee House is being refurbished, by the way, for 2.3B.
The incident just shows how lowly Kenyans have taken the presidency. Because it was made by fun and jokes, and people started making memes and you know, all those things. It just shows you how lowly the president is being taken right now. The presidency is being taken, because if it happened other times, it would be a serious thing. It was, you know, somebody who must have been answerable. Why did it happen? Why did you allow that to happen? And the president, like I said, should have been evacuated from that place. And it just shows you that actually, when you look online, nobody cares about that it happened. In fact, people are more happy that it happened. Even the government bloggers were not even condemning it. They were trying to explain and show, you know, rationalize why it happened. You know, somebody was carrying a shoe because he didn't have a phone, and then somebody realized he was blocked by that shoe, and then he hit that shoe, and then accidentally it landed on the president's head.
Yes.
You know, it doesn't. It shows seriousness that it deserves, and it shows you that people are taking the presidency President Ruto is cheapening the presidency.
If this is the person who can ignore 40 plus million Kenyans, you can imagine what this small circle of security around him go through. I had him trying to tell police officers who had made their way to wherever the shoe came from, telling them, wachana na wananchi, you know, if there was anything further than just an accidental shoe being thrown towards the direction of the president, if there was someone with anything more than that, just a shoe around that place, if it was intentional that this is what we want to do to the president, if you prevent the police officers or the security officers from getting to whatever it is that thing came from, then you are even worsening the situation, because they need to now do their job, but you're not allowing them to do their job. I think he also needs to allow his security to perform their duties. Now
this year they have put 2.3 billion allocated to the new budget for rehabilitation and refurbishment works. So Nairobi State Lodge will spend 894 million to rehabilitate Nairobi State Lodge again. Remember,
they did it last year.
Financial year. 46 billion will go to Mombasa, and then there's also some money that has been set aside to refurbish a Harambee House. And we're asking ourselves, why would you want to refurbish Harambee House? If the president
an office that you don't need.
The president is never there.
Never there.
He's never there.
When's the last time he was on Harambee Avenue?
I can't remember.
So
do you even notice it needs refurbishment?
No.
Or maybe he doesn't go there because there are no seats, so they want to buy seats. Maybe.
How could zile za plastic?
Labda vile wanataka ku upgrade kidogo ndio. But Jeff, the president had promised. You remember during the Gen Z, these are some of the promises that the president made that he's continually breaking. Because he had promised, remember he said stop Harambee.
Yes.
He had promised to reduce number of advisors. He had promised to reduce the development budget here, state house or state lodges. He had promised to remove the budget for first lady and second lady, because we are told those are not constitutional offices, but they are going back on each and every promise that was made. I think he is assuming that Kenyans have forgotten what took them to the streets, and now rewinding and doing the same things that he promised not to do.
All right, guys. The assassination of Charles Ongondowere.
An assassination of an MP is not something that, their lives, and every life is important, yes, but, the fact that the MP has been killed, we are going to spend millions of money even to replace him as an MP. And it shows you just how, as a country, the lawlessness that we are witnessing at the moment, because it is chaotic everywhere. And the anger Kenyans are showing, Jeff, the anger Kenyans are showing to the elected leaders, to the president, to MPs, to whoever that holds a powerful office, the anger is real. It was unheard of in an African culture that when somebody dies, people will start digging dirt on them and telling you, you are saying this man is a good man, but he was not a good man. He did ABCD to me. The anger online, people are saying, the MP had said, Major Bashir in Parliament, when we were talking about Gen Zs, he said, world over, people are killed, and we mourn and we move on. People are telling the MPs, your MP has been killed, let's mourn and move on. Because that is the anger. And when you heard Honorable Millie Odhiambo speaking in Parliament over the BBC issue, she tried to acknowledge the anger that is being felt. The MPs have moved on. They think everybody has moved on. The president has moved on. He's still making the same mistakes because he moved on. But the Kenyans are still angry with what is happening. Kenyans are still angry with the MPs. My friend Elache lost her son, and the comments online were very bad.
Nasty
comments. And you can't run away from the anger that these young people are feeling. And unless the country addresses that, we are going to spiral more and more towards worse things to happen.
Murutu, this
is going to snowball into something else.
Look like a targeted killing, obviously, right?
Yes,
The guy on the duty.
And that is where Kenyans get confused because they want to sympathize with whoever it is that targeted the MP, but again, there is this other face, like Obuya says, where he is faced with a lot of criticism, But of interest was the sentiments and the statements, speeches given by leaders from the region over the weekend concerning the killing of the MP. They make it even difficult for Kenyans to want to sympathize with the family and the friends, because listening to them, for leaders to use such a situation to want to blackmail the government because you recently entered into some partnership with them, if that is how they would have been handling everything else or every other death, then Kenyans would say, they're making a lot of sense. But you can't go hard on a government, threaten to even walk out of the broad-based arrangement because one of your in the leadership circle has been killed, when we have a lot of youths who were killed, and on their death is where you rode and got to these kinds of arrangements called broad-based government. But you come out so strongly when it is one of your own, one of your kind. But when it is about the rest of Kenyans, you do not come out guns blazing as they came out over the weekend over the same. So they have made it even more difficult for Kenyans to sympathize with the death of the MP because of their hypocrisy, their blackmail and
double speak.
Double speak. So, in as much as we sympathize, it is a lesson. It is a time for the leadership to see that if you go hard on Kenyans, when you are down, they will not hesitate to dance on your graves.
We still don't know who killed Tom Mboya. We still don't know who killed J.M. Kariuki. We still don't know who killed Robert Ouko.
This is a second Were MP being killed. We had
there was a Mugabe Were.
Mugabe Were.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is somebody who is a member of the broad-based government. So they are very keen to protect their own. If he was an anti-government MP, I think the results would be different. So let us see how this spirals out. But from where I sit, let them just know it happens to Kenyans every day, everywhere, every time. And they are being buried and nobody's making noise about it. And no investigations happens when it's ordinary Kenyans. So let them not be so surprised. I wouldn't want to tell Parliament to forget forget and move on, like they've told us. But we are asking them, what do you want us to tell you?
The BBC documentary. What?
Touched on raw nerves.
Definitely.
It touched raw nerves. Actually.
Yes.
It touched raw nerves, but what is it that we didn't know that BBC were telling us? They were just trying to pinpoint this could be the person who killed, because we knew, I was there. I saw people dying. I saw people collapsing on the grave. I saw brains out on the floor. I saw people who had died, and so the fact that people died is undeniable. Is undeniable. We're just trying to, trace that Officer A could have killed victim B. And so there was nothing. I don't know why the government was so icked by whatever the BBC had done. And Millie told them, Millie Odhiambo, I think she remains one of the more reasonable, despite the fact that she's a beneficiary of the broad-based. He said, what the media did, they will always do. You might want to say that they are trying to incite, but the incitement, these young people are just waiting for something so small to spark again what happened. And so she told them, please, just be sober when you are talking about these things. Stop saying that, people are killed world over and we mourn and we move on. And you're asking why BBC is doing this thing 1 year later. You think 1 year later the families of the people who died are forgotten because it's 1 year later? Or the families whose people are still missing are forgotten because it's 1 year later? These things, it is still very raw to most of these Kenyans that went on the streets.
We are just about to table another finance bill.
Correct.
We needed someone to remind Kenyans where we are coming from. And it could not have come from a better place than that documentary. This government got to a point and got comfortable. That is why they are undoing everything they had promised. Every other measure they took after the Gen Z's protest, they have undone. And therefore, the documentary coming at the time where we are expecting another finance bill. Remember, we skipped last year, because of the pressure. We are now expecting a finance bill, and then we are reminded through this. It cannot go well with those people that think Kenyans may just revisit some of these things that we have ignored, and that is what is eating them up. That there's a possibility that Kenyans will start now reviewing. When I was saying kuongeza volume, waliongezewa ka volume kidogo. Do not forget where we are coming from. We began with the finance bill, got to where we got. It has been forgotten. If you are forgetting, then let me remind you. Then it happened. So they have an issue with the timing of the documentary, because it comes just when Kenyans needed to be reminded that we are forgetting too soon.
What annoyed me, even during the watching process, is immediately when we saw that the filmmakers were arrested.
The local ones.
So I asked myself, wait a minute. The guy who was captured on that camera shooting has not been arrested. The guy who was captured in those cameras beating up Gen Zs and committing all sorts of atrocities has not been arrested. But the guy who put together videos of the killers of our young people has been arrested. Where is common sense? Yani, Mimi, I have recorded the thief. I am in trouble, but the thief is not in trouble. We are yet to see the arrest of any. This was empirical evidence. Here it is. These are the people who killed your Gen Zs. None of them has been arrested. But the person who is showing us who killed the Gen Zs has been arrested. And this is where I was coming to, Jeff. As we are speaking about finance bill, I don't know whether you've seen what UDA MPs have done to our people. The government has given them money in CDF, which they are using as bursaries. Now, what they are doing, and I saw Molo MP, what he did, you put people in a place. And because they desperately need this 3,000. Imagine wanachukua watu kama 3,400 wanawekwa mahali kwa tent ama kwa jua. You are hammered with government propaganda from 8 in the morning mpaka you're being told wangapi wanasema Ruto must come back. You know what choice do you have? You want to live there with a bursary check. You say sisi wote. I am telling you, those people have been used in such a bad way. By the end of in the evening 6 ndivyo wanapewa check. And then, you know, who was taking a video, they're being told wangapi wanasema Ruto must come back, Ruto must, and all of them are seated there. And you know, if you go home without a check, your child will not go to school on Monday. So they are misusing our people, and that's what they want to do also with the issues of finance bill. They come to you when you're desperate. Sasa you walipewa around 1 year bursary. When they want to come and do public participation on finance bill, that's what they are doing. They are holding bursary checks and refusing to give them, so that when they want to come to places where they've been rejected and they want to hold a rally and come and tell you rubbish, what they do is they say wale watu hakupata checks za bursary zinapeanwa on Thursday. When you come on Thursday, you find a proper meeting for government propaganda, and those checks will be held until evening. You're told to sing a lot of Kenya Kwanza nonsense until evening, and then they are given their checks. This is bad, and we have to call it out, because they are dehumanizing our people. They are using now, yani kacheka kabasari kanashikwa hivi kama carrot, and those parents are just looking at it and salivating and moving around with it. I think this bursary issuance must be banned. It is bad, it's unfortunate. We had one who spent 5 million to give out 3 million. Mulimona huko kwetu. And these things must be stopped. My member of parliament, John KJ Kerry, the people of Dagoretti South are completely and totally disillusioned at what he said. You know, because he comes and speaks and we so, but I also don't blame him. You know, he acted Kamotho for a very long time. I think he was rehearsing at becoming Kamotho in real life. And he has become a better Kamotho than the actual Kamotho. Because now everything else that William Ruto says, according to John KJ Kiarie, is correct. And then he comes back to Dagoretti South and he wonders why people are unhappy with him. And then you cannot continue like that, John KJ Kiarie. He has to choose. And then he wants to force himself to the people of Dagoretti South for another term. And he's telling them, I want to be elected again. And the people are telling him, you can't go to parliament and speak that carelessly. You remember this guy told us that there were no maandamano, ni Photoshop. And then people went berserk. He wondered what is wrong with people. He came back to us. He came back to us and said, there are no abductions. People have gone and taken themselves to their girlfriend houses. In fact, he said it on Citizen TV in the morning, that people take themselves to their girlfriend's houses and then they claim they have been abducted. According to KJ, they have no abductions. KJ amemaliza hapo sasa, amekuja amesema that BBC is pushing a British agenda. You ask him, KJ, so people did not die, there was no maandamano, nothing happened. No, BBC is mad according to KJ, and all of you Kenyans are mad.
In real land, we say whoever feeds you can slap your mother while you watch.
Wow.
Whoever is feeding you can slap your mother. So
as you watch,
there's nothing these Kenyans will do, because they get that 3,000 bursary. So if you ask them, should that remain? Atakwambia hiyo isiguzwe, because you have already blackmailed him or her.
Yeah.
So there's nothing else you can do. But just going back to what Fanyamambo said, I saw Junet Mohammed bring a motion in Parliament the other day that he wants to form a committee, an ad hoc committee in Parliament of 13 members to try and see how to amalgamate all these bursaries together. You remove the...
And thank God hiyo kitu ilitoka hapa.
Yes.
Atoe
kwa president, atoe kwa MP, atoe kwa governor, atoe kwa nini, alafu wa add zile capitation, ile pesa inapelekwa kwa capitation shuleni, then they put all those funds together and they see if they can then manage that fund as either independently or just give schools and make sure that the education then is free. So it's a process that has started. The motion was moved, but then Bunge went on to SES. So we're expecting that when they come back, they'll form that committee and the process starts.
There's one thing that this new look opposition is bringing out about Baba. You know, when Baba went to William Ruto, he had a bargaining chip. He would go and say, look here, I am carrying the Western Bloc, I am carrying Nyanza, Nyanza itself and South Nyanza, which includes Kisii. And he usually used to say, I vied once with Kalonzo, I had 48%. I vied with Mudavadi, I had 48%. If I vie with Martha Karua, I still get 48% of the votes cast. Actually 49, because Ruto got 51, and so on and so forth. So that is what he used to come with as a bargaining chip. Then comes Matiang'i, and he takes away the entire Kisii Nyanza away from Raila Odinga. So even as Raila Amolo Odinga is going to bargain with William Ruto, he knows that he can't say now I have Kisii Nyanza. Hiyo imeenda yote as a block completely, totally. I don't think there's one Abagusi guy who would vote for ODM today. Yeah, Osoro is in UDA. He's not even in ODM. So there is nothing. Then number two, the Western Bloc now is singing Tawe, and they are being led by my good friend, the governor for. So the thing is, right now that opposition has taken away so much from what Ruto was banking on, because he was saying he's done with Mount Kenya, now he's going into the Western region and the Nyanza region. But now, part of what he was banking on has gone away, and it is in Wamunyoro. It is being controlled from Wamunyoro headquarters. So this is a very interesting space to be in, and William Samoei Ruto should be a thoroughly worried man.
I disagree, because this, same monkeys, different forest, or same forest, different monkeys.
I agree to Wamunyoro. I think he has done exceedingly well from what we expected. We expect that after his impeachment, he's going to dwindle and aanze kulima huko venye President Ruto huwa anasema
na andika kitabu
but he has done exceedingly well to try and bring all these opposition heads together. Unfortunately, Jeff, as of now hakuna mtu ule utasema kama sio hawa kuna mtu atakuja kutake over. Actually there's none who has the muscles, the financial firepower, the to try and people to network and make people coalesce around him or her. There's no new person that we are going to get.
No.
And so as of now we still have to choose between the lesser evil, between the two devils, who is better. And opposition, the time will come where when the rubber meets the road, that's where it's going to be the hardest for the opposition. Who are they going to give? Is it going to be Matiang'i? Is it going to be will Kalonzo accept to be Matiang'i is DP? Will the mountain say we don't want the presidency this time? Ataki kuwa president, ataki kuwa deputy president? Will that be acceptable with the akinafanya mambo? There are lots of permutations that are going to go on during that time, and I suspect President Ruto is going to use that to try and sow seeds of discordance in that coalition, because President William Ruto, the more presidential candidates we have, the better for him. But if the opposition then will accept and say hii mara hii wacha tupatie Martha Karua na wote waseme wako nyuma yake, ama hii mara hii wacha tupatie Kalonzo Musyoka na wote wakuwe nyuma yake, ama hii mara hii wacha tupatie Matiang'i ama hata Umutata na wote wakuwe nyuma yake, President William Ruto is going to have sleepless nights. But I suspect that he's going to fund even a few presidential candidates. I wouldn't be surprised if one came from the mountain and said, I'm also vying, Ndindi Nyoro could also vie for presidency, and is going to take away a few votes from the opposition coalition.
Yes.
And that is might work for President William Ruto.
Like Obuya says, it is true. There could be an opportunity for the president to destabilize them in this sense. As we speak, anytime they sit together like that, in Western Kenya, there are people who ask, was Natembeya there? They don't ask whether Eugene was there, because insofar as Western is concerned, and insofar as those that believe in the Tower movement are concerned, Eugene is a compromised individual. He's part of the system that has been there. The freshness that people have been agitating for is not represented by Eugene. So anytime they're anywhere, the question comes is, was Natembeya there? Anytime they meet, they believe Sifuna is one of their one of the persons that speaks what they like, fights and stands for what they believe in. They ask, has Sifuna shown any signs? Has Sifuna said anything about that coalescing, the formations that are coming up? So, with these questions still hanging around this loyal opposition, if these faces that are constantly being asked whether they are with them or not continue standing on the sides the way things are looking now, I think there's still the risk of destabilization.
These two gentlemen are forgetting only one thing. Show me a Kenyan who will vote for William Ruto. At least Kenyans have decided they know who they are not voting for. So even if we have 100 opposition candidates, they will all get very few votes, each one of them. But William Ruto is not getting any votes. That's the constant.
But he's
Kenyans have made a decision that they know who they are not voting for.
But Wanyamambo, you know, the president is the consummate politician.
He is the consummate politician.
He knows.
Who will consume. You see, Kenyans have decided that we don't have any more shoes to throw at him. So we shall throw ballots at him. And it should be ballots against him.
And Fanyamambo is also forgetting that we need to take care of anyone who is a professional vote stealer. We know they exist. When that time comes, it does not matter whether Kenyans have decided they will not vote for William Ruto. If there will be disgruntlement in these camps, they will even forget to kuchunga kura. The most basic assignment that they have moving forward ni how do they ensure that the vote will be protected. But if they will not have the unity at the time, hiyo kuchunga kura itakuwa ngumu. Hiyo kidogo ile the president will get, he can decide to multiply.
My friend, there are places he will not have agents. Because these agents are supposed to be civilians like you and me, who live on a road that is known, and in a house that hakuna kwa hiyo compound haina gate. Alafu unasema when ni returning officer, when ni agent wa Ruto in that. My friend, there are places he will not have agents. So we need to be cautious about that.
Gentlemen, 2027 is far away. And they say a day in politics
It's way too long. Way too long.